Hello and welcome back to college to Coach Bill's Sports Show. I'm Coach Bill. Thank you for joining us. If it's your first time with us, we do college football, pro football, fantasy football, NCAA 14. We do some play breakdowns, a little bit of everything when it comes to football. It's just something we love and something we enjoy talking about. So let's huddle up and let's get into today's episode. So this episode is a kind of a college football wrap-up, what I liked, what I didn't like, what I'm looking forward to seeing from some of these teams moving forward. So let's just get into it. Georgia. Let's just say Georgia wasn't very friendly or accommodating, playing Oregon out of the Mercedes-Benz Stadium there in Atlanta. They came out with something to prove, and they did a masterful job of proving it. Georgia looked extremely good on offense. There's a couple things here or there, a couple mechanics things, a missed block or two, but as a whole, their offense looked well. The defense really surprised me, though. It's a younger defense. It's a younger team. They had lost a lot of talent to the pros last year. And there was a lot of that young team that did step up and kind of say, hey, we're here. Don't forget about us, which was good to see. I'm sure their coaching staff really enjoyed seeing it. So, Georgia really showed me some stuff in that game. My question is, can that defense become as dominant as it was last year? Because while that offense did show up pretty well, there's a couple things they need to work on. Just a couple things they need to work on. So most of the big name schools took care of business. Most of them had a weaker opponent that are in the top 25 and won their season opener by 21 points. So, the Alabamas of the world playing Utah State, you don't expect a lot from that kind of a game. It's just, you have a team that's as dominant as Alabama. It's kind of hard to really pick out anything they did wrong, did well. They did what they were supposed to do. They beat the teams they're supposed to beat. Michigan State, playing Western Michigan. There were so many more. Texas A&M playing Sam Houston with a 31-0 win. Michigan beating Colorado State 51-7. So there was just a lot of big name teams beating littler teams. There were some of the teams in the top 25 that won, but they showed me a lot that they needed to work on. One of those teams is Kentucky. Look, Kentucky, you're supposed to be what a lot of people are saying is the number 2 team in the SEC East, but yet you allowed Miami of Ohio to be within 3 points of you at halftime. That's not a good look, guys. That's not. Your quarterback is a good quarterback, but it just looked like there was something off between him and his receivers earlier on in the game. Now, they did do well. They did end up, winning. So I don't want to take that away from them. But there was something to be desired in that game, I guess is the best way to put it. You left some stuff on the table there. We'll put it that way. Another one that kind of, I don't want to say surprised me, but didn't show me a whole lot is NC State. Now, don't get me wrong. East Carolina is a tough place to go play at. Has been for a long time now. And NC State had some stuff they needed to take care of in offensively, losing both their rushers, losing some solid pieces on the offensive line. But people are saying you're supposed to compete for the ACC championship this year. And you beat East Carolina by 1 point. You didn't score after halftime. And honestly, East Carolina should have won that game. They missed 2 field goals in the last 4 minutes of the game that would have been game winners for them. So it's hard for me to say that NC State really showed up and did what they were supposed to do. Now, I'm not trying to take anything away from East Carolina. That is a dangerous place to go play. And anybody that goes into East Carolina needs to keep their head on a swivel and be prepared for that kind of environment. But this was your toughest test. You've got 2 games after this that are fairly weak. And then you've got Clemson. This was your game that you were supposed to show us that, hey, we know what we're doing. We're here. We deserved to be ranked as the number 13 team in the nation. And you just didn't. I'm sorry. But you just didn't show me enough. Another team that didn't really show me enough, if anything really, is Ole Miss. Not trying to take anything away from Troy. It's a wonderful school. But Ole Miss clearly has lost a step without Matt Corral. Clearly. They won by 18, so I'm not trying to take that away from them. But this was a game that they should have won by the 20s or 30s points. They should have. Especially if you're the 21st best team in the nation. Especially if you're supposed to have this unbeatable, unstoppable offense that Lane Kiffin is supposed to be, this offensive guru. You only put up 28 against Troy. So I'm not really seeing it. Another one that I'm not really seeing it from is Houston. Houston, you were supposed to be one of those group of 5 teams that kind of stepped up and said, hey, we're here. You're going to have to notice us. And you fell on your face. Having to go into overtime to beat University of Texas San Antonio doesn't bode well for the rest of your season. And doesn't bode well for you to really, step forward and say, hey, we need to be taken seriously, because nothing against the the Roadrunners there at UT San Antonio, but they are not a dominant school. You should have blown these guys out of the water if you were Houston. It shouldn't have had to be an overtime game. And it wasn't just an overtime game. It was a 3 overtime game. That's just... If you're supposed to be this team, you're ranked, first of all. You're supposed to be one of the Power 5, one of the Group of 5 teams that's able to challenge the Power 5. And you win by 2 in triple overtime against UT San Antonio. I just don't see it. Now, some teams that did impress me this weekend, in no certain order, we got the Penn State-Purdue game. I mean, that was phenomenal. Absolutely phenomenal game. Early clash in the Big Ten. These teams both came out with something to prove, and it did not disappoint. It was a wonderful game. Old Dominion surprised me. Definitely didn't see them beating Virginia Tech. Maybe I was a little higher on Virginia Tech and a little lower on Old Dominion than I should have been. But that game definitely is going to have me going back and looking at that again, trying to make sure that I didn't miss the point with either of those teams. Another game that I absolutely loved to watch was North Carolina versus Appalachian State. Now, the total points in this game, total points was 124 points, 63-61. And I'm not talking about a basketball game here, folks. This was a football game that was 63-61. And Appalachian State scored 40 points in the fourth quarter. Let me say that again. 40 points in the fourth quarter. There were teams this weekend that didn't score 40 points in 4 quarters. They put it up in 4. So that was a offensive shootout, and I loved seeing it. May's little brother, Drake Mays, I think is his name, definitely showed North Carolina's got some offensive weapons, and it's nice to see. Another game that surprised me was Ohio State versus Notre Dame. I'll be the first one to tell you I wrote Notre Dame off. I thought they were extremely overrated. They did well. I think a lot of that came from, I think his name is Smith and Jobu, the wide receiver from Ohio State, and his injury and him not being able to play the whole game. So I think a lot of that came down to that loss, and then the wide receiver core having to step up to fill that kind of vacancy, because he's supposed to be, a top 10, top 20 pick in next year's draft, and that's a big hole to fill. Another one that surprised me was Florida, Utah State. I'll be the first one to tell you I had Utah State going undefeated this year, going to the national championships from the Pac-12. They definitely won't go undefeated. I think they still have a small chance to make the national championship if this is their only loss. But this game to me is more about Anthony Richardson, AR-15, whatever he's going by now. This is about Anthony Richardson, his ability to step up in the big moments, make plays, make decisions, and rise to the occasion. Which is huge for him, huge for his draft stock, huge for that team entirely. Arkansas-Cincinnati was another good game this weekend. I think Cincy dug a hole too deep early on in the game that when they came out of halftime and had that second half explosion, it was just too deep and they couldn't get out of it. I would have loved to see Cincinnati play the way they played in the second half and the first half. But when you dig a hole, you never know if you're going to be able to get out of it, unfortunately for Cincinnati. And lastly, a team that really surprised me this weekend, Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina beat Army, and I am excited by the implications that is for Coastal Carolina. Don't get me wrong, Army's not, top 25 team by any means, but Army is still Power 5 school, or they're the independent. They're still a Division I school. Still a solid win against a historical program. And what that does for Coastal Carolina and the players there is reminds them that, hey, we are that team. We are the guys that can come in here, that can show up, and we can cause havoc. And I love when a smaller school team like that has that mindset, because they can do some scary things throughout the season. Absolutely scary things. And I hope they do. I hope they do. I haven't looked at Coastal Carolina's schedule, but if they've got another Power 5, if they've got another, historic school or a Power 5 school on their schedule, I'd be a little afraid if I'm that school. We'll see. We'll see who else they got. Ooh, that's a good game. Coastal Carolina and Old Dominion. Coastal and App. Ooh, Coastal gets Virginia at the end of November. Virginia, you need to be ready for that game. Coastal Carolina showed they're not afraid of anybody. They're not backing down. You need to come into that game prepared, especially since it's close to the end of the year for y'all. You don't want anybody checking out because Coastal can bite you. Very happy football's back. Very, very happy football's back. We got Florida State, LSU, and Clemson, Georgia Tech to round out the weekend for us. Next weekend we got college football and pro football. Pro football's back, which is amazing. So it's that time of year, folks. Thank God football's back. Thank God football's back. Thank you for watching. Please comment, like, subscribe, all that good stuff. Let me know if there were some games that I missed that really surprised you this weekend, that really stood out to you. Maybe there's some teams I missed some holes for. Just let me know down in the comments. Let's have a discussion. Let's make sure we're all working together on this. Once again, thank you for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day. Ready, break.